Hello and welcome once again to Gaming Under the Influence. I'm Mike here with Alex, coming to you from GreenDragonCVR in Woodbridge to talk about video games.
Oh, yeah.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm also doing pretty good. Still playing Liza P.
Liza P, oh man.
Suffering through a Soulslike once again. This one's, I think I'm at 40 hours now, and got a bit of a ways to go.
It's up there, eh?
Yeah.
In comparison to most Souls
That's
games.
right, I think
it's
so.
Like,
it's up there with
lengthwise, right?
the proper FromSoft Souls games, yeah. Except for Elden, which is much longer, but
yeah.
Got me thinking, being stuck at these segments of the game for days on end.
Oh, yeah.
Having to redo the same boss literally hundreds of times, enjoying the experience all the while. I'm thinking to myself, it's probably that, the apprehension people feel towards this genre, their reluctance to participate in it might have to do with their misunderstanding of what's going on and exactly the experience I'm having right now.
Yeah, it can definitely get to you when you sort of replaying sections. People,
Sure, it can. Of course it can.
Frustrated with the lack of progress, feel like you're wasting your time, bash your head against the wall. Rah, like
that's right, yeah. But that's exactly right. A lack of progress, approaching it from the perspective that you're trying to attain some goal which your play is instrumental to. I think that might be the hang up here. So, I thought maybe we could use this opportunity to talk about how, in a psychological sense, to approach Souls-like games in 2023, right? Like, not how mechanically to play them, but how, when you're going to play one, you should look at the experience and situate yourself in relation to it, how to understand it so that you can, in the first place, not hate the experience, and in the second, get what you're supposed to from it.
I feel like it's a big mindset thing. For
I think it is a mindset
There's
thing.
A very heavy, and a lot of it, I feel, is conditioning over the years of the style of games we've played that have sort of led us to just kind of almost some of them as like interactive movies, like whether it be like an Uncharted or even like an open world game. Like there's a lot of that constant progress. You're always seeing stuff, and like very little getting stuck unless you choose to up the difficulty and then have some kind of experience like that, whereas these games are just tuned
exactly that
for a difficulty that will bust your balls no matter what. You can't drop it down, you can't it's built in, right? So
I remember before Demon Souls, my overwhelming experience playing games since the mid-90s was, in the first place, that every game had difficulty settings. This was in the PS1 era. I wasn't around for Battletoads and stuff. I'm not old enough for that, unfortunately. No. But the games that I grew up with, they had difficulty settings. Most of them,
for sure. A lot of them did.
Either that or they weren't that difficult. They expected you to complete them. Games like Spyro, Year of the Dragon, and stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that you could easily run through for the most part.
At least easy enough for a young kid to play. That I never found that they were particularly impossible to finish.
Right, yeah.
And then games started to come out in the PS2 era, PS3, 360. This is when you really started to notice that difficulty settings were ubiquitous, right? Like every single game had one, more or less, right? And developers really did lean into that interactive movie sort of thing. They expected you to be pulled along for the ride. There was no expectation. There was no possibility of hard failure or lack of progress, lack of moving towards the end of the game, such as it was.
Yeah, I think you always had at least the option, for the most part, to like drop it down difficulty wise so that you could coast through it.
That's right. In any case, I think it's safe to say that most games before Demon Souls, and still probably, are designed with the expectation that you won't fail very much, maybe once or twice in any given segment, but then you'll get through and you'll move towards the end.
Especially open world games where there's a variety of things you need to complete, missions, stuff. You can't have the player like progressing to a halt because it's anti this to like the whatever to the
they need that forward momentum.
Exactly.
So I think, coming to a Souls game, I remember my first experience with Demon Souls and with Dark Souls, and back then I, always even looked for help playing these games with the summons and stuff, not even like I learned to play them properly. Back then, still, like, I got to a boss and I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah,
like,
you just can't.
It's impossible.
No, it's effing impossible, and there's no way around it. Yeah, I know the feeling.
You know what I mean?
That was a lot more prominent back in that day because Souls was still a new thing, and you were experiencing what we were all experiencing. Everybody on the global friggin' scale was like, how do we progress through here? What is going on, right? And that's right. Like, it was the birth of that kind of wiki-based Souls-like.
Yeah,
that's
for sure it was.
Another part of it we can touch upon later, probably. But
what I find interesting about this, is that we talked so much about, in the past about how games are different than tools and instruments and advertising, in that they're self-justifying, right?
Yeah.
You play them because the act of playing is good and beautiful in and of itself. You're not doing it to accomplish something.
Right.
You're doing it because you do other things so that you can play, right? Like it's not instrumental, right? And I think baked into this idea of like constant forward momentum in games is a fixation on an almost instrumental it's an almost instrumental appreciation of games built into that, I think. Right? The idea that if you're not moving towards the end somehow, you're wasting your time, right? Like you're always wasting your time, bro.
You're always wasting. No, that's the key, the funny thing. It's that feeling though that you're wasting you're like double wasting your time, I guess, because you're wasting time playing a video game and you're not making progression. But at the end of the day,
but that's the I mean this in
one and the same
in a good way, right? Like your time is not, your time is being, your time is not being used for something, and that whether that be like making $1 or whether it be progressing towards a goal, like in either case, you're seeking an end, and that's not what you're doing. You're seeking an extrinsic end, that is, and that's not what you're doing when you play a game, right? So I guess I'm trying to say that in the first place, these are games that expect to be played as games,
Yes,
they're not tools.
Lots
they don't
care
to
and error, a lot of memorizing levels,
a lot of
enemies,
playing, right?
Like, a lot of playing,
just
very
playing the game,
heavy, a lot of systems.
This stupid euphemism. What's it? Not the medium is the message. It's not the destination, but the journey, or something to this effect. Here, for once, this is accurate, right?
It's
like the act of playing the thing is the point, not getting somewhere. So of course you want to get to see the end and all this and that. It's not a live service game, but my point is that it expects you to revel in the act of playing. Other games,
and it will be over and over, and that's part of that mindset.
That's definitely
you're gonna die.
I think that's what redo. That's exactly why you need to employ this mindset. But in the first place, it definitely expects you to play and to revel in the act of playing, not to have expectations about a numerical score of yours going up, let's say, or about you reaching the end of something and being congratulated for it, but to play and to, in improving it, the very act of playing, derive enjoyment from that, right? And so, like you just said, right, like, what does this demand on the part of the person playing? Going into it like you would go into a character action game, or a Call of Duty game from this year, let's say, or an open world game from this year. It's not going to get you. No, you're not going to. Looking at it the same way, trying to derive the same good from it, you're not going to find it, and you're probably going to be irritated.
I feel like it's half the battle is the mindset of going into a Souls game, where you basically have to tell yourself and understand that you're going to be doing things over and over, and you're going to be dying, and it's going to be frustrating. And I feel like conquering that enables me to go into one of these games and not like stress too much. Like, I died to the Puppet Master in Lies of P, the first boss. I died to him probably like 25 times. And I was getting annoyed and kind of upset, but like, you're not banging your head against the wall. Like, you kind of have to understand and tell yourself that this is part of the process, and you'll get there. You will.
It's entirely about that, man. It's about like looking at the thing the right way, and I think compared to other games, there's like a nobility to this kind of playing, in that, as I just said, it's self-justifying, right? Like, quite like playing an instrument. You're sitting there learning a song. It doesn't come out perfect the first time, right? But you keep doing it because the act of playing the music is
rewarding in a sense, right? You're trying to get to makes sense,
and seeing yourself improve and stuff like that, right? Looking at it in this sense, like it's not a consumer good meant to satisfy you, but something with its own inner structure that you're trying to comport yourself to and get better at, right? Like, this is what you need to do to enjoy these kinds of games, I think. It is.
I like the musical instrument analogy there, where you're always improving, right? And you get better and better.
But the act of doing that, the playing is itself what you're here for, right? The playing of the music, the playing of the game, right?
Like, exactly.
That playfulness, that total divorce from any purpose or utility outside of the text, outside of the game, right? You're here for that, and if you look at it that way, like, I'm here to play the thing, I'm here to learn this boss, not to get a new shiny piece of gear or whatever the hell. I'm here to play the game, right? Look at it objectively, I want to say, almost. You know what I mean?
And while it does have numbers, and stats and stuff that you improve, largely, really, the gameplay is still the most important aspect. Like,
of course, every game has, games are built of numbers in a way, right there. But, I think with this comparison, we mean to draw attention to the fact that some games make numerical representation, not only the entirety of the gameplay, but the entirety of the progression is contained in that, right? You get better insofar as numbers go up.
Yeah. And in this game you have that, but it's totally not as prominent.
Like numbers go up, but they don't make you better or worse necessarily, right? Like, I think the numbers are supposed to, like in any game, these are like symbolizing the realities in the world that come before the player's interaction with it, right? But your interaction is still key here. And on the other hand, in say turn-based JRPGs or squad-based RTS games, which are also turn-based, your interaction, your participation, we might say, is a necessary part of playing the game, but it's secondary to your intentions as they make the text move. You don't actually have any skill-based or moment-to-moment input that determines the course of things as you would in a Souls game or a circumscriptive action game where a skill-based failure can cause you to have to restart the section you're playing, say. I think, the main point is pretty clear, right? Like, it's a psychological approach that will make these games open up to you.
Yeah, you definitely have to go in with that sort of open mind that you know what you're signing up for, right? Or else you'll get annoyed and you'll probably want to rage quit, and that's
right.
Once you get into like tilted and really frustrated, then it starts to throw you off. You really have to put it down if you get to that point, or if you can keep your head like cool and calm and chill, you can kind of get through it and figure it out. It's a big mental game. It's like really, many things in life.
Just about looking at the thing in a slightly different way, right? Like, it's not about getting somewhere, it's about playing the game, about the self-justifying act of playing the game and engaging with what is being represented by the game in the act of playing it there, right? Like we talked in the other video about how, Liza P, like it has this neat feature where it engages in world building via the boss battles, via the visual details and dialogue and stuff in the boss battles, right? So the same spirit that you're supposed to sit there and engage with the world via the boss fights, like the act of playing them is supposed to be the enjoyable part, right?
Exactly,
not necessarily just barreling through it,
I feel like this is the most elegant way we can say, like, get good.
Yeah, that's right. The game is about that, right? That's what it's about, That's the gameplay.
Pretty much.
It's entirely what it consists in, If you don't want to do that, fine, but that's not this game, right? It's totally against that's why I can't bring myself lately to play these Souls light games, I call them, with the difficulty.
Souls light.
Yeah.
Not like, light.
In any case, I don't think they're Souls likes, right? They subvert the most integral element of what defines the genre, at least as we're presenting it right now, and that is the fact that you have to revel in the act of playing, independent of whether or not you're progressing somewhere, right?
Yeah, you just got to keep chugging, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna die.
A sense of detachment from outcomes and appreciation of the act of playing. I think that's what's integral here, and I think like you were saying, it's just a matter of how you look at the thing, right? And it doesn't require some mental fortitude or being a tough guy or anything like that, right?
Yeah, no.
It's just a matter of understanding what is going on here, what the game is asking you to do. It's not asking you to play it like other ones. It's asking you, again, to more like a real and pure game. Revel in the act of playing it.
And if anything, more of like a really old school style of game design where back in the day games were very short, but they were intentionally hard to increase replay value. I'm talking about like original Nintendo, Sega, like Sega Genesis style, like 2D side scrollers, Ghosts and Goblins.
It's probably, an early precedent for the kind of thing we're seeing here, right?
Yeah. This was very much like a throwback to old games, like the first Demon Souls anyway. I remember when people were trying to describe it for the first time, they were like, it's kind of reminiscent on super old game design that they said there would only be 4 levels in like a Castlevania game, let's say, right? But they had to be hard as hell, so you had to play through it 16 times just to get to the end, and then the boss would kill you anyway.
I think then when you're playing a game that has difficulty sliders and stuff like that, it feels like the reality of what's being represented by these mechanics is diminished, right? Exactly. There's this picture of the thing you're fighting or engaging with, but it, whatever it is, it's really just it's a cardboard cutout there to fade away in the face of your desires, right? But
exactly.
It feels like in a Souls-like game, you crash against this thing, and it has its own independent life and reality that will resist you no matter what you do.
No matter what.
Right? You have to engage with it on its own terms, and you have to learn it. It has its own reality, I guess I'm trying to say.
Yep.
And that's why these kinds of games, they're not just mirrors for you to just look at and to enjoy yourself in, right? they're its own thing.
Yeah.
You know, you have to learn it and engage with it. And I think for that reason, you know, like I just said, they're more game-like games. They're a pure form of game, right?
Gameplay is like
more intrinsically
very important. Yeah, and there's a lot of you know, emphasis on the design of that, right?
I think they're more like self-assured. They're not like, all right, I'm gonna try and satisfy this guy, I'm trying to get somewhere. No, it's like, this is what I am, and what I am is good for its own sake, right? That's what the game is saying to you. And if you look at it that way, like you're going in to play a Souls-like because you're learning to play it the same way you would try and learn to play a song on the guitar. Yeah, you're going to enjoy yourself, actually. Yeah, you know, in spite of the fact that you're not having fun in this whatever.
It's a much better way to approach it.
The way that somebody high on drugs might have fun, right? No, you're not having fun like that. No. Yeah. You're having fun rather like somebody learning a skill, a piece of music about an interesting concept, right? That's what's going on here. So, yeah, I think that's how you play Souls-like games. You approach them not from the vantage of just barreling towards an outcome, but as though the act of what you're doing is good in itself, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. I like that we talked about this. We did a video a couple weeks ago about like which games to play, but we never really talked about like the mental
the
aspect of it, the mindset. Yeah, so
it's an interesting thing. Not many people talk about it. It's so like floaty, right? But thank you guys very much for listening, and I hope it's helpful to you in playing some Souls-likes.
Play some Souls-likes. Oh yeah.
Take care.